Speaker Gbajabiamila inspects ongoing renovation of the National Assembly ahead of resumption of plenary. Senate President commends security chiefs for improvement in security situation across the country. And later on the program,
if people commit electoral offenses and there's no punishment, there's nothing to ensure that it's not repeated, it will continue to happen.
Honorable Adejoro Adeogun will join us to talk about some legislative business. Also,
to get them avail of procedures, to get them avail of the skills and how lawmaking should be done and oversight should be done.
The Director General of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies will join us to talk about strengthening democratic institutions. You're watching the Hallowed Chambers on TVC News. I am Tijesu Adewi. The House of Representatives will resume plenary on Tuesday at a makeshift chamber in the National Assembly. This is because of renovation work currently ongoing in the National Assembly building. Speaker Gbajabiamila visited the building to see the men at work and get updates on the plans to transform the structure into a world-class facility using state-of-the-art technology.
Which place now? There's the old chambers and where we are right now. It will be ready on Tuesday. They've done so far so good. This work started in August. Started a few weeks behind time, but for good reason. But so far between August and now, giant strides have been made. You can see that the old chambers has been ripped apart. The innovations are going to be state of the art. We will be, at the end of the day, be proud to have chambers that match the best the standards all over the world. So I'm quite impressed with the work so far. I would encourage them to double the pace, because as it is, unfortunately or fortunately, this is not for the benefit of even this 9th Assembly. It's for the benefit of the 10th Assembly. And it's not going to be ready, the old chambers will not be ready until sometime in August next year. So we're talking about close to a year. And that tells you the level of work that is going on. But so far so good. We're happy. And this temporary site where we'll be sitting for the next 9-10 months is obviously a far cry from where we used to be, but then again they have done well in adapting this what used to be a hearing room to a legislative chamber. A lot of adaptation has been made, a lot of innovation, and we're quite pleased with the work so far. So we're ready to go.
President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, is impressed with the improvement in the country's security situation, but he is also worried over the incident of oil theft that has affected the country's production output and revenue.
I am happy, and I'm sure I will be speaking the minds of my colleagues, that from then, after that meeting, to today, we have seen remarkable difference in the fight against insecurity in our country by our armed forces and other security agencies. And we are very, very proud of that. Those who have made every effort to steal our oil at an industrial scale, I'm sure some of them may not be that lucky to escape. We want to see trials of people who are caught, because when that happens, citizens would know that nobody, no matter how highly that person is, can go scot-free if he or she decides to get involved in this kind of criminal activity.
Joining me now on the program is Honorable Adejoru Adeogun from Ondo State. It's good to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
The countdown to the end of the 9th National Assembly has started. Share with us your experience so far.
First, the opportunity to be among 360 Nigerians who have the privilege of being elected into the House of Representatives out of over 200 million people. It's a rare privilege. It's given me an opportunity to actually interact with a cross-section of brilliant Nigerians from all over the country. And then you look at the fact that I have an opportunity actually to be of service to my constituents, the people of my state, and to Nigeria generally. It's been awesome.
Your primaries seem to have thrown up so many issues across the country. Your primaries seem to have thrown up so many issues across the country.
Well, first, the first thing for every legislator is an aspiration to probably rerun and then return to the National Assembly. But for me, it's beyond that. I've lived a life in which, every action I've taken, I've been propelled by God. So I'm just like, okay, what next? Service, either at the National Assembly or elsewhere. I'm still going to continue to serve Nigerians from wherever I am, either here in the National Assembly or even outside. I'm at a stage in my life in which all I just want to do is give back to groups, to thank God and to thank the people for the good things that's happened to me in the past.
Your party primary seems to have thrown up so many issues across the country. What are the issues affecting you?
I think for some reasons, some agents of my party made the error of not understanding the Electoral Act is not something they could manipulate. The Electoral Act is strict about, process of conduct of primaries and where it could be held. And then for some reasons, some certain elements decided that they do not have enough confidence in coming to the constituency where general election will be held to conduct a primary. So primaries was held in the state capital. And we've challenged it, and we're very positive that the outcome will actually throw away the illegality that's been done. And we're hoping that the court will rule in good time, so that the proper thing can be done.
There seems to be a high number of lawmakers not returning to the National Assembly, and this seems to have become a culture every 4 years. What is the implication of this? Well,
it's sad. But I think it's a reflection of the misunderstanding of the role of the legislature in Nigeria. In other climes, what people do is try to encourage longevity, because the longer you stay, the more experience you gain, the more you're able to contribute to lawmaking and then providing checks and balances on the executive. That's the essence of lawmaking. But I think in Nigeria it's more like there's this wrong perception that is a chop-by-chop business. And unfortunately, the political party system in Nigeria is such that certain elements, certain individuals are given more power than even the populace. They're given more power than the people. So you have pockets of, people who by some virtue God has lifted them to certain positions. Rather than them believing that, the opportunity they have is for them to allow the best to emerge from amongst the people. They rather want to put their puppets, their cronies, people who can say yes sir to them, rather people can say yes to the citizenry.
How well will you say your representation has impacted on the lives of your constituents?
Immensely, because right from day one I had a plan. Before I got into politics, before I got into elective office, I'd actually sat and tried to identify the problems of my people. And I keep saying that, the most important thing that we need to deal with in my constituency is human resource. When you have young people finish universities, finish secondary schools, and they're becoming area boys and political and thugs, rather than being gainfully employed, we'll have a serious problem. So what I've done is focus a lot on actually getting people gainfully employed, and at last count, at least we've employed about 65 people through my intervention. I introduced scholarship scheme for young people, some into colleges of education, some into the universities, to ensure that people who are indigent but have enough human capacity to be educated are given an opportunity to be educated. And in that, I think we'll reach close to 1,000 people. we've intervened even in the areas of infrastructure, road infrastructure, education especially, because I focus a lot on education. Intervention in providing furniture for schools, books for schools, school building, because in some places, and then in security areas where we'll build police barracks, we've tried to help police with certain equipment to at least ensure that they're doing better. So generally, I think I've done well.
Your committee is currently investigating the recent jailbreak in Kuje. 65 officers were said to be on duty, yet they couldn't withstand the bandits. What does this say about the capacity of security agencies?
It's been interesting. The most important thing is that it's regrettable that it happened, and we're hoping that lessons will be learned. From what we've heard so far, it's a shame that we practically allowed bandits to walk into the prison and take people away. It was not that we didn't have the capacity to resist, it was just that the people who were deployed to that location did not show the will. From the account of, those who came and gave evidence before us, they did show that, the armed men on ground didn't show the will, and then the process of reinforcement was a bit too slow and sluggish. And then there's actually a problem that we need to address, the issue of night operation among our security forces. We should not act like they only have issues during the day and they're unable to act at night. I think it's a major issue that we need to address in this country.
This is not the first time we will be having a jailbreak. It seems there were no measures to forestall the reoccurrence.
Well, I think that's the whole essence of the investigation by the House of Representatives, to look at what happened, lessons learned, and then we're able to at least put forward recommendations to the appropriate arms of the federal government. But looking at it further, you need to look at the fact that correctional centers in Nigeria were built in the 60s, early 70s, when the measure and the nature of crime was slightly not as sophisticated as they are now. At the time we built most of the correctional centers, we didn't envisage that there would be custodial centers for terrorists. Now they are. When the Minister of Internal Affairs came, he did mention that Kuje Correctional Center is the most fortified in the country. So if the most fortified correctional center in Nigeria can be overrun in 1.5 hours, so it gives you an idea what the situation is with all the other correctional centers.
I also have joining me on the program the Director General of the National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies, Professor Abubakar Suleiman. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
How will you describe the synergy between the Institute and the National Assembly? How has it helped improve legislation?
Thank you very much. As we all know, the Institute is a creation. It was the creations of National Assembly. To be precise, the Institute is an agency of the National Assembly, and it was created to perform a major role. And that major role is to build the quality of the legislation emanating from the parliament, both at the states and the federal level. And essentially, the Institute as a capacity development hub of National Assembly in the areas of research, in the areas of technical intervention, in the areas of motion drafting, in the areas of bill drafting, has performed very well in the last couple of years that it was set up. So far so good. We have had a lot of harmony, a lot of synergy. We have had quite a lot of positive relationship with National Assembly. Do not forget that the Institute has a governing council headed by the Senate President and the Speaker, and they decide the policy direction of the Institute. What do? They approve the work plan on a yearly basis. They give us direction on what to do, how to go about it. The funding of the Institute was being approved by the National Assembly under this governing council. And as such, when you have a baby, that is under the tutelage of his parents, you don't need to ask question again, how has it been so far? Because We are creations of the National Assembly, our directions, our dynamics, what we do, how we do it, is being, directed.
There's a growing concern about the quality of bills passed by the National Assembly, as some of them do not get the president's assent. How should this be avoided?
You see, the issue of bills not being assented to, Mr. President, should not be seen from the technicalities deficiency. At least people want to see it from the point maybe the bills are not well put together, or that the motions were not well presented, or that maybe the kind of scrutiny that should go into, the process was not perfectly done. I don't want to believe that, and that is not the case. A lot of bills that were turned down by Mr. President, perhaps, happen on account of so many variables. One, politics are involved. A lot of politics come into being, especially when you look at what obtains in the 8th Assembly. There's no doubt about that. There's some bills that could not see the light of the day have some political undertone. I wouldn't want to go into details. Secondly, there are other bills that one too has a lot of political undertone. Maybe bills that has to do, not like PIB for instance, like the issue of police, like the issue of what do you call it, state control of police, putting police adjudications under the purview of state governments. Is that some political undertone? This kind of push and pull between the states, governors, and the presidency. It starts a lot. It's not because the idea is not good or was not good enough, but because the center believe, if you give the power to the state or the subnational, it will be too overwhelming and we'll be able to control them. We should have a strong center. It's political, no doubt about that. When you look at issue that borders on even the issue of state creation, these are political. It's not because the bills are not okay or the bills are not good. But if you look at issue that borders on gender, bills that borders on gender that don't even go beyond National Assembly, it's purely political, So, and until we go beyond this primordial or quote in quotes, this political stigma to our perception to issue, then we have some of these bills not being assented. So that's one fundamental variable that inform that. It's not because the quality is not good, it's not because the idea is not okay, but because of this dissenting or political infighting between either the subnationals and the national, between the women folk and the men folk, between the governors and the president. Purely, that has been the case of most of these issues.
In the application of the principle of checks and balance and separation of power, the legislature has always been at loggerheads with federal government MDAs when preparing the budget. What better technique can be adopted to avoid this kind of friction?
You see, budget process or budgeting process is a political process. We tend to mistaken budgeting exercise to be an economic exercise. It's purely political. What goes into the budget document could be in figures, 20, 30, 100, trillions, billions. But in terms of the exercise itself, it's purely political because we are talking about the spending for the year, the expenditure for the year. We are talking about placating certain interests. We are talking about provisions of certain infrastructure. We are talking about pacifying or taking care of certain, group, individual, community, state interests. The budget or budget itself is politics because it's all about who gets what, the chunk, the quantity, when and how. That is budget. So until we see budget itself as politics, we cannot really appreciate why there are frictions, both at the state and at the national level, especially at the level of the legislature. I'm not here to tell you that there won't be friction. There will always be friction because it's politics. Because you are talking about which state you get, get rolled, which state you get slides, which state you get water. You know, what we should have in a year in terms of infrastructure, in terms of health, education, environment, how do we go about it, how much we spend. It's a case of, it's an interest-laden exercise, which is all what budget is all about. You see, when they say you are spending 20 billions on road construction, the question auditor will ask, the question EFC will ask is, was it budgeted for? So the point I'm making now is that budget itself is politics, and who gets what in terms of the chunk of the budgeting figures itself is politics. In other words, the more closer you are to the power that be, the better for your people.
Recently, there were grave concerns about the frightening security situation in the country, but it appears the intervention of lawmakers through motions and resolutions to help end insecurity are not adopted by the executive. Is this not a problem, yet insecurity persists?
As I said earlier on, the democracy of Nigeria, democracy of anywhere anyway, is not just Nigeria, is one democracy, or the so-called liberal democracy, is a system of government that tends to give the executive more power than the legislature. There's no doubt about that. And as such, in every clime, legislature are perceived to be a bit subservient to the executive. Ideally, it shouldn't be, because the legislature remains the first organ of government, and the legislature remains the epitome of democracy in any democracy at all. So it's quite unfortunate that we allow the perception to thrive, and we allow the executive, so to speak, to have their way on most of the issues, that borders on governance. The security issue is one sector of governmental policies that the executive has been hide under to legitimize the authority, wrongly or rightly. Because they believe security issue, you don't discuss it outside. It's secretive. It goes with a lot of secrecy. We should not even debate it in the public. Because the adversary should not know what next we want to do, how we want to do it. So the executive has hid under this, so to speak, the secret components or stigma of security itself to assert authority.
With next year's general election fast approaching, what more should democratic institutions do to win the confidence of the electorate, which is critical in giving credibility to the electoral process?
You see, when you talk of democratic institutions, we have the informal one and the formal one. The formal democratic institutions are structures as political parties, INEC, NOA, our institutes, and some other agencies that perform one role or the other in beefing democracy and democratic ethics. Then when you talk of informal one, you talk of the political party, you talk of the pressure group, you talk of the press, you talk of the NGOs. All these constitute structures. They are all democratic institutions that are expected to perform critical role in deepening democracy, in sensitizing Nigerian electorates on their rights, on their responsibility, on their obligations, in ensuring that Nigerians vote wisely, in ensuring that such factors as religion, ethnicity are out of our political thinking and perceptions. The point I'm making is that I want to give it to the NGOs, the press, and even our own institutes, that in these aspects of discharging our responsibility to develop a democracy, to develop a democratic practice and procedure, our various democratic institutions have done very, very well. INEC has discharged our responsibility. We have gotten the Electoral Act been implemented in one way or the other. They've come up with a lot of devices that tend to give confidence onto the Nigerian people that yes, at least all things equal, our vote we count. The press have done their role as we are doing now. Our institute too is not relenting. The various NGOs, CSO, they are always there on the field, on the road, sensitizing Nigerian people to say, look, this time around, let's get it right. And we have seen all these imports in what's, even in the NSAS protests, in the emergence of new political parties, in the emergence of so many, political actors, presidential candidates, gubernatorial candidates. The window is now open. The ventilation is now there. What we used to be before, where you are now cloaked into one room and you can't go. When you a party deny you ticket, you can't go anywhere. That has not been there again. We are able to get to this level on account of the role of governments, especially National Assembly, and Mr. President's readiness to say, look, this time around, I will ensure that your vote counts. We're able to get to this level because of the role the various democratic institutions like INEC as play or is playing. We're able to get to this level because of the role the press too is playing.
That is all we have time for on the program today. You can watch a repeat broadcast at 7 a.m. on Sunday. Also, you can see this episode again on TVC News YouTube channel. Do not forget to subscribe, like and share. Thank you for watching. I am Tijesu Adeoye. See you next time.